He's in the process. He's already written the second book. It's having some issues getting shipped, but he's here anyways tonight to talk about a hoax hidden in plain sight with the fake moon landing conspiracy. Randy Walsh, how you doing, my man?
Good. I'm doing good. Nice to be here. Finally connected. Paul, Jesse, and Johnny. So, yeah, happy to be here.
Fantastic, man. So what started you on your journey to kind of write these two books? It's very interesting stuff. It's very impactful, honestly, because this is something on a very large scale of magnitude that it affects a whole society. And I know that we're going to get into that, but how did you get to the point where you are right now, my man?
Yeah, so actually, very interesting story. And I was old enough actually watched Apollo 11 launch live in school. And, you know, I think I was in grade 4 or 5 or something at that time. And I remember the excitement around it. So, I mean, I grew up believing in the Apollo missions. It was, for me back then, it was an inspiring venture, to say the least. And, I mean, that in part led to my interest in aviation, right? So that I was able to pursue a career in that. But I think it happened about just over 20 years ago, maybe 25 years ago. I came in one night from work, and I just switched on the TV as I usually do. That's what you do back then. And it happened to be a documentary on the Apollo missions, and I wasn't really paying a lot of attention to it. And eventually I realized that they were talking about Apollo 13 because they were talking about the supposed accident that happened on the way to the moon. And they were talking about the slingshot effect around the backside of the moon. And for those that don't know what that is, that's gravity assist. So they, of course, had an explosion of the service module on the way there, and they had to use the moon's gravity to swing behind the moon and then get them back to Earth. So Jim Lovell, the commander, was talking in the documentary about that experience. And when they came out from the dark side of the moon, and for those of you who know Dark Side of the Moon, back then in the 1970s, that was a famous Pink Floyd album, right?
Yeah, great album.
So, yeah. Anyway, he was talking about firing the engine and the importance of keeping the Earth within a grid pattern on the window, the lunar module window. And I remember him specifically saying that. And in the way he was talking, in the context, he was saying, well, you know, I was telling, make sure when I fire the engine, you have the moon within the grid pattern of the Earth. Because remember, they had all kinds of system failures from the explosion on the service module. And I remember my first thought was, that's a very precarious way of navigating 240,000 miles away from the Earth. If you're off by 0.01%, you're going to be thousands of miles off course. And I remember thinking, how would they have the propellant to correct for that? So there was all kinds of things that were starting to sort of resonate with me in terms of that statement that he had made. And, you know, and I didn't give it much thought, but I remember it lingered with me for a while. And I think it was a few years later when I sort of delved back into it. And of course, with the onset back then in the early 2000s, when the internet really took off and YouTube videos were coming out, and there was a lot of videos and literature coming out about the Apollo moon hoax, as well as a lot of other stuff. But then, you know, a lot more people had access to this information. I got back into it and looked into it. And I never forgot Jim Lovell's comment about keeping the Earth within a grid pattern. Now, think about this for a second. We're talking a distance of 240,000 miles away from Earth, and you're using visual cues to keep the Earth within a grid pattern. That's not going to work. You need precise navigation. And that's really what set me on my journey years later. And I think it was about 10 years ago when I really, really delved into this, and I started ordering books and NASA reports, and I really delved into it.
If you'd like to see more Randy Walsh, just let me know, and I will make sure to do more videos on him and his thoughts and what he thinks about flat Earth and the like, and more about NASA. Again, thank you for watching.